Alright. Hello guys, good morning. Thanks so much for attending the class. Madungog lang?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Morning, sir.
My Google Meet is currently giving me some warnings. Let me just turn off some of the applications real quick. Hold on. Murag daghan kong i-open nga apps or something. Dali lang. We'll close this. And hold on. Alright. Okay. Again, guys, thank you so much for attending the class. Today is gonna be our in continuation. Today is gonna be another online class in continuation to our discussion about web development. So today we'll talk about cascading style sheets. Before we begin, is there any way you can turn on your cameras, guys? Those who doesn't have any problems with internet connectivity, can you just keep your cameras turned on all throughout the class? Para dili kayo awkward. Magklase nga, wala ko makita. Thank you. Okay, that's good. Alright, thank you. Just keep your cameras turned on, guys, okay? Just keep it turned on, especially if wala man siguro katipid of internet. But those who are using mobile data, I will understand. Alright? Okay, thank you. Alright, so, nakapamahaw na ba tanan? Ako mo pa pag... Nakapamahaw na ba? Nakaligo na ba ang tanan? It's already 9:09.
Kape lang, sir.
Ha?
Kape lang.
Morning, sir.
Morning. Alright, so we'll begin now. Today's topic will be about cascading style sheets or CSS. Now, who among you have already tried CSS before? Or nakatry na og CSS? Or naka-experience na na? Naa? Wala pa. Wala pa.
Naa, sir.
Ana? Kinsa tong ratio ko bantay sa raise and hand. Alright, those who have tried CSS before, would you mind sharing us your experiences and pretty much just give us an overall description, let's say short description on unsa lang day ang CSS before we begin, so that we can set our expectation on what are we going to learn with CSS. Okay, kinsa daw to nakasulay nag CSS? Would you like sharing us some input about CSS before we start? Again, this is to make sure, this is for us to set our expectation on what are we going to learn and how long should it take for us to learn CSS. Anyone? Go ahead. Wala pa nakatry CSS before? Alright, it's okay. I'll take this silence as a no then. Okay, so today's topic will be about cascading style sheets. Now, we already know of CSS way before our very first topic, where we discuss about the introduction to the World Wide Web, rather. So we compare cascading style sheets when developing a website. We compare cascading style sheets as if we're going to build a house. That is the part that we are going to add the structure, not the structure, but the design, the format or the additional design of our house, diba? Kung ang HTML is like building the foundation, the structure of a building or a house, cascading style sheets is like adding doors, windows, roofs, trusses, something like that, to make sure to support the foundation or to support the structure of the building. So it's the same case with web development or web designing. CSS is supposed to support or to control how our HTML is going to look like. Diba? We've already done with our assignment about HTML. Are you done? Are you already done with the assignment? Mana? Nakagamat na ba?
Yes.
Katong
Yes, sir.
resume. Okay, that's good. Alright, so as you have noticed, basic ra kayo atong assignment. It doesn't have any other design elements to it, any graphics aside from the pictures. But aside from that, there are no way of you can tell that the picture is well designed or the web page is well designed, diba? Basic ra kayo, it's just text, a white background, so on and so forth. Okay, but using CSS, we'll be able to enhance. We'll be able to control how the HTML tag is going to look like. Because using HTML only, it's very hard. It's a little hard for us to design web pages only using HTML. We can, but it's hard. And maybe basic na kayo nga design. But using cascading style sheets, we'll be able to control. Okay? So it's wala tag ga-add og new design sa atong website. We are not adding more inputs. Okay? There are no additional input that we're going to add in our website. However, we are just going to control how our website or how the HTML tags, atong mag-add na itong HTML tag is going to. So that's the purpose of a cascading style sheet or CSS script. Not to add design, but to control or additional elements. Di na ta mag-add additional elements to our website. But we are just going to control how those HTML tags na inyong di-add sa inyong assignment, you're going to control how they are going to look like, or let's say how they're going to look like using the cascading style sheets. So if you have any questions or clarifications, make sure to just raise your hand inside Google Meet, or you can also send your question here inside Google Meet as well. So just a review, previously we've discussed about HTML. So I'm hoping that you guys did some research. Okay, maybe not all of you. I can't expect everybody to do research, advanced study or additional study, self-study about the topics that we discussed. But I'm hoping that some of you, hopefully, are doing advanced studies with regards to HTML. Because again, I cannot discuss everything about HTML. Face-to-face ta, naatay 2 hours para mag-discuss, then 3 hours para mag-online, para mag-hands-on. But since we are very limited when it comes to the time, so I would really appreciate it if you guys will do an advanced research. So with that being said, from now on, since I will not be discussing everything, okay? Pero na ko i-discuss tanan because it will take a lot of time because daghan kay mga properties, both HTML and CSS. Instead, I'm going to introduce to you the topic, and then all you need to do is just study it in advance. And using the applications that I told you to download, and katong mga tutorial nga apps, it will really help you a lot. That helped me, katong mga application nga ang gihatag ninyo, that helped me learn more about or enhance my skills in web designing so that I can teach it to students like you. Alright, so we've discussed about HTML5, the different HTML tags. We've discussed to be exact, the headings, paragraphs, links, and images. And then HTML attributes. For that, we've discussed the language, href, title, size, style, ID, and class. So today, we're going to discuss about the CSS or cascading style sheet. You can also watch the replay using the link on your screen right now. So under cascading style sheets, we'll be talking about what exactly is CSS, and then we're going to take a look on the CSS syntax. And then there are 3 ways on how to use CSS. We're going to learn each one of them. And then CSS selectors, what exactly that is, and how do we use it in the building our website. And of course, we're going to learn additional CSS, basic CSS properties. But like I said, I'm gonna tell it again and in advance, there are hundreds of CSS properties, and we cannot use our entire time discussing all of them. So I'm just going to introduce to you some of the important CSS properties, and then I would highly recommend it to study the other properties on your own. Is that understood? Before we begin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, dili na ito ma-discuss tanan. However, I'm going to introduce to you the basic ones. Then please study the rest of the CSS properties. Just like studying advanced the rest of the HTML tags or elements. Okay, so formatting is a coding process that allows a control on how the HTML tags will look like once it's rendered by the web browser. Cascading style sheets or CSS is the most notably used language for formatting. So our goal here, since we've already done structuring, there are three stages in designing a website. We have structuring, formatting, and adding interactivity. If you can remember that back in our first meeting, or first topic rather. So we're already done with the structuring. This time we'll be doing formatting, and it is a coding process that allows us to control how the HTML tags are going to look like. So, diba, another assignment, I asked you to create a simple resume na web page that contains your personal information and objectives, skills, something like that. So those are very basic because it was all using HTML. Now, this time around, we're going to enhance our HTML tag or HTML web page. So the purpose of CSS, ang trabaho sa CSS is to control how those HTML tags are going to look like when it's rendered on the screen. So again, dili na ta mo add additional input to our website. All those HTML tags that we've already added, we're just going to control how they are going to look like. Okay, so for example, if we've added, siguro for sure we've already added H1 or H2, something mga headings sa atong website, and by default, unsay itsura sa heading? Okay, would anyone share? Unsay makinumdum? Unsay default nga itsura sa, let's say, sa heading na H1?
Ako, sir.
Narciso, go ahead.
Yan ang ako siya gihiding sa bold siya.
Naka-bold letter siya. Then, unsa pa man? Ang font niya, font face.
Ako siya, kung big, sa tao, ganun siya. Like, ang font page niya, sir, is mga, butang na to, mga 32, sir.
Dako siya nga, font size. How about the font face niya? Kanang, unsa siya nga font gigamit? Anyone?
New Times Roman, sir.
Yeah, Times New Roman. Right, that's right. Times New
Times New
Roman.
Roman.
So that's the default one, diba? And using HTML, we cannot change it. Maybe we can, of course, we can, but ito, nagagatingog sa akong likod. Ay, balag to. Okay. Alright. By default, it's Times New Roman. It has huge letters. It has bold, kanang naka-bold siya ba? Dako siya nga pagka nga letter. And it's a little hard for us to control. What if dili ko ganhana nga design? Ganahan ko lain nga color, alright? By default, the color is black. What if I wanted to change the color? I want to change the font face. I want to change the font size. Ganahan ko mas padak-an pag yun. And I want it to be aligned in the center or aligned it to the right. So that is formatting comes in. That is where formatting comes in. So by default, all HTML tags will behave katubang sa ilahang default nga settings ba. But by formatting it, we'll be able to control how those default, how our HTML tags are going to behave instead of the default ones. Diba? By default, ang H1 is bold, Times New Roman, dako siya nga letter, and black color. What if I wanted to change all of those? Right? That is where formatting comes in. And CSS is one of the best or most notably used language for formatting HTML. What is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It is a style sheet language used to describe a presentation of an HTML document and how the elements should be rendered on the screen. So that's it. CSS defines styles of web pages, including design, layout, and variation in display across devices and screen sizes. So we'll be able to, using CSS, we'll be able to control how the overall design of our website. That's number one. Number two is the layout. Okay, we can move the elements around. Okay, by default everything would be aligned at the left side and vertically or horizontally. But using CSS, we'll be able to move the elements around the the screen. Pinato siyang ibutan sa pinakapos, sa tunga, sa pinakilid. Will be totally up to you. And this is very important. Variations in display across devices. So we all know nowadays we have a lot of different screen sizes and resolution. Even our phones, like lahi nag sizes atong phones na ay na ay katong standard nga 16:9 ratio na ay tag-as na. Mine is, if I'm not mistaken, it's 18:9, so that's 2:1 na ratio. Na uban nga 1.9 or something. Basta laylay ang sizes ato mga screens and resolutions ato mga phones, mga devices. CSS will be able to allow us to make sure that our website will adapt to different screen sizes and resolution. That is called responsive website. More about it in our future meeting or lessons. So that is the use of CSS, designing, layout, and making sure that our website will be able to adapt to different screen sizes and resolution. So this is an example of a CSS property describing an HTML element. Okay, so we have body. Do we have body on our HTML? Na may body nga HTML tag?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
that is where everything comes in, right? Diyan nato ibutang tanan para whatever it is that we want to display on our screen, we're going to put it all in place. Check sa nawa ko ang na kusina kanala. Right. The body is where everything that we want to display in our screen should be placed. Sa gawas di ay nada speakers na pala. Alright. So body is one of the elements. So basically we can control on how the body is going to look like or behave using CSS. And this is an example. So for the body tag, we all know that this is an HTML element. So we can control what should be the background color. So we can either use color, pictures, or patterns or something like that using CSS. Alright? So by default, unsa mahitsura sa body? Unsa siguro behavior sa body by default, guys? I would like to share. Based sa inyong assignment, inyong nabantayan sa assignment. Just go ahead, guys.
White, sir.
Okay, white ang yung background. Okay? And maybe, siguro wala pa muna bantay kayo. That's one. Yes. Wala siya background. Ikadawa is, everything is, if you can see, if you have noticed, everything is, every lines or every elements are aligned to the left side. There is siyang area mag-start always. Bantay mo? Sa left side siya. Alright. So in this example, let's take a look at the body. The entire HTML body element is set with blue background color because we set the CSS code or CSS property with background color to blue. Therefore, the entire since everything is inside the body, meaning tanan nga elements nga gibutang nato sa body, everything will be background color is blue. And then we have P. Unsa lang gito ng P? Nga HTML tag?
Sir.
Paragraph. Right? So we set here that the font size is 20 pixels, the color is gold. So therefore, the paragraph element is set with 20 pixels, font size, and gold font color. Okay, so this is an example of a CSS. And how do we use CSS in designing? So first is, pangitaon nato ang element sa atong, pangitaon nato ang HTML tag that we want to control, that we want to format. And then we're going to call it inside our CSS file. So how to call it? We just have to type in the property. The HTML tag. And then after that, enclose everything inside curly brackets. And then inside the curly brackets, for example, body, curly brackets, open and close. Inside the curly brackets are the CSS properties. Yeah. Kabantay mo kaning curly brackets. Asa mo makainom ani? Familiar ba ni siya nga paagi? Like the block of codes are kanang ibutang nimo siya sa curly brackets. Asa mo nakatry ana? Kinsa makainom siguro?
Sa CSS condition?
That's right. Okay, it's in CSS. So not just in condition. Yeah, that's true. In conditions, a conditional statement, in loops. It's also basically katong int main. Okay, kinsa makainom sa int main. Pag start nato sa tong program, we will declare our initial na function. So it kind of look like this. and after that, your block of code written inside curly brackets. That's the same thing with CSS. And like I said, like I told you before, most programming and scripting languages have this similar approach. So one good example is using curly brackets in enclosing the codes. Okay, let me erase that. Okay. So let's try to break down each what the different parts of, or basically how to set a CSS property. Let's try to break down one. Let's use the katong P nga example na to ganina. So a CSS rule set is composed of a selector and a declaration block. So that means this entire code is what you call a CSS rule set. So if na ay HTML tag that you want to format, now you have to call it on the CSS nimo na file, and then to call it, you just have to write the HTML tag and then your code inside this curly brackets. Now, the entire thing is called a CSS rule set, right? So it is called CSS rule set. This entire thing, okay? And a CSS rule set is composed of a selector and a declaration block. This is the selector and this is the declaration block. So there are a lot of lines now, so let me erase all of it. So just remember, the entire thing is called CSS rule set, but the HTML tags that you use to call on is called selector, and then all the codes inside our curly brackets are called declaration block. Okay. Oops. Let me erase all of it. The selector targets the element we want to style. So this is really important. For us to be able to control how an HTML element looks like, we have to call it. We have to target it by using the selector. Now, there are different types of selector. We'll discuss it in just a moment. But one example is just typing in the HTML tag. Alright? And then the declaration block are grouped in blocks, just like in C++, in Java, and soon in PHP. It's also the same thing. We'll also be using curly brackets to enclose our codes. It's the same thing. Each declaration block contains CSS declarations which are wrapped by an open curly brace, this one, and a closing curly brace. So this is really important in writing a CSS rule set. Always make sure to enclose your codes, your properties inside this brackets. Now again, this is the selector and this is the declaration block. Now, next is, since this is declaration block, let's talk about what is inside. Saan nato pagsulat ang atong declaration block. CSS declaration or declarations are contained inside the declaration block. Each declaration has to be separated by a semicolon, just like CSS, just like C++ and Java. Each line must be separated with a semicolon. Each declaration has to be separated by a semicolon, otherwise the codes won't work. It is, however, allowed not to put a semicolon in the last declaration. Although it is allowed, the only way na allowed lang nga di ka mo add og semicolon if it's the last. Meaning, if there are two declarations, 1 and 2, do we have to add a semicolon on the first one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we should add a semicolon here. On the second one, is it necessary to add semicolon?
Not necessary, sir.
Not necessary, because it is here. It is allowed not to put a semicolon in the last declaration. However, as much as possible, try to add semicolons na good para di ta mangalimot. So, although it is allowed, but since it is necessary, although it's not allowed, but just for best practices, para dili ta maglabel, always add semicolon every end of the CSS property or declaration. So, I would highly suggest to still add semicolon in every declaration. So again, each line, for example, font size 20px, that is a declaration. And then for the second line, color is gold, that is also a declaration. And these declarations are enclosed inside a declaration block. Now, each declaration, let's try to break it down further. Okay, we already know the entire thing is called CSS rule set, and CSS rule set is composed of a selector and a declaration block. The declaration block is composed of declarations, kaning mga lines. And then each declaration is composed of a pair of property and a value. So it's called CSS property and a value. Let's take a look at this example. This is a CSS declaration, right? Now, the CSS declaration is composed of a property. So this is a property and this is the value. And separated by a colon. Always remember, ang tunga, colon, ang ed, semicolon. Alright? So, kani siya, colon, and this is a semicolon. So, kuan, para di uglibog. So, how do we write CSS declaration again? Anyone? Okay, to write a declaration, we should write the property. This one, font size, for example, and then the value. Let's say, for example, 20px, and separate them with a semicolon. And then each end of the declaration is a semicolon. So let's talk about properties. Property is a human readable identifier that indicates which stylistic feature to change. So, for example, if we want to change the font size of our paragraph, then of course we just write font dash size. So it's human readable, right? Because that is something that we can understand. So since we are trying to change the font size, then we just have to write font dash size. And then for the value, it is given to a property which indicates how the specified stylistic feature should be changed. Alright? So value should always be partnered, or property should always be partnered with value. So depending na nimo kung unsang gadak on, for example, if it's gonna be font size, then it would be totally up to you what would be the font size that you're going to use and which unit you're going to use. So there are different units. We have points. This is only for font size, okay? So I point, and that is gonna be instead of px, that's pt, and that is what we usually see on kanang sa Word. For example, let's open up Microsoft Word. And kanang font size nga itong makita, dire, if you open nato ni siya, for example, font sizes. So, kanang makita nato dire, these are called points. Alright? So, if we're going to increase this, we just have to highlight it all, then maybe increase the font size. So, this is using 72 points of font size. These are called points. Alright? So, if we're going to use that as our measurement for using CSS, that is PT. And then we have, of course, pixels. That is PX. So let me say point, pixels, and then napailain katong OM. OM or I forgot, but maybe soon I will let you know what are the different. Oh no, not OM but EM. I forgot what that means, but we can use this to declare the size of the font size and so on and so forth. But I would highly suggest to use either of these 2 points or px. Now, if you want to for example, I would only use point if nakoy suhiron nga design nga naa sa Microsoft Word or sa Photoshop, and then I have to make sure that it's perfectly the same. And Photoshop, Microsoft Word, since they are using points, then I'm going to use point in my design. But most of the time, everything that I'm going to use for measurement is px or pixels. And some designers uses em, and some other designers uses another measurement. But all of these will work just fine. In CSS, there are more than 300 properties and almost an infinite number of different values. Not all pairs of properties and values are allowed. Each property has a specific list of valid values. So that's true. For example, ang imong property is font size. Do you think you can add, let's say, here, right? Again, it says here that each property has a specific list of valid values because not all pairs of properties and values are allowed. That's true. For example, if you want to change the font size, that is your property. Do you think you can set color? For example, ganahan ko color blue. Okay. Ganahan ko nga i-change na ko ang font size to, let's say, 100 px. But then you write blue because you think nga you'll be able to change the color here. Do you think this is valid? Ang value is
No,
blue? Alright, no. It's not. It's impossible. That is illogical. So, that means each property has a specific list of valid values. Not all values will work for each properties. But there are almost more than 300 different properties, and we cannot discuss all of it today. So that's why, please, after this, do a research. So a CSS declaration, just a review, a CSS declaration is composed of a pair of properties and a value separated by a colon. Okay, so just a review, the entire thing is called rule set, and a CSS rule set is composed of a selector and a declaration block. And then a declaration block is composed of declarations, and each declarations are composed of property and value separated by a colon. Alright, so this is how we write CSS. This is how a CSS syntax would look like. Do you have any questions so far before we proceed with the CSS properties? Do you think you can write CSS rule set on your own?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just a review. Again, this is just a syntax. Okay, this is syntax lang how to write CSS property or CSS rule set. So we write the selector, okay, and then open and close brackets, and then the declaration blocks. So these are called declaration blocks. Alright, inside the declaration block are list of declarations. So each declarations are composed of property and then value separated by a colon, and then each property is each declaration should end with a semicolon, just like this. So that's how we write a CSS rule set. For the complete list of CSS properties, please go to this website, w3schools.com/css, and select CSS reference. And then, na lang. Because again, we cannot discuss all of it today. So you just have to do it yourself. So let's try to open this up para narap natin idea or how do we study the CSS on W3 Schools. So then just go to W3 Schools and then go to reference, go to CSS, click CSS reference, and here. So right now it is sort siya alphabetically, but I think right. Okay, anyway, there are different ang properties na sa left side. You just have to click them one by one. As you can see, there are over 300. So we cannot learn all of them today, but I would suggest to at least try it yourself. Some of them yourself. So the 3 ways how to use CSS. So we already know how to write a CSS rule set, but how do we actually use it for our website? So there are 3 ways in doing so. We have internal, external, and inline styling. Internal CSS, the CSS rules are written inside the HTML document using the style tag inside the head element. All right, so we'll try these the 3 ways of using CSS in just a moment. But the first one is in internal. So in internal CSS or internal styling, all of our CSS files or CSS code, CSS rule sets is inside our HTML file. Diba? Every time that we're going to create a website, we're creating an HTML file. So, kung ibutang ra nato sulod sa HTML file ang CSS, that is called internal CSS. That will work. They're also called, and this is the most common one, maybe this is the proper way of using CSS, that is external CSS. A CSS file containing all the CSS rules are saved separately and must be linked with the HTML document. With an external style sheet, you can change the look of an entire website using one CSS file. To link a CSS file, we will use the link tag. This one, for example, this. I will talk about it in just a moment. So this is the proper way of using CSS, an external styling. That means we are going to create a separate file, a CSS file, and we just have to link our CS file and our HTML so that we can control the HTML elements. Alright? And how do we connect? How do we link our HTML and CSS file? Using this. We will be using the rel na attribute and then href na attribute. So, unsa lang ito ng href? You can remember? Kinsa makinuman ani sa inyong assignment?
Para pag-link o kuan sir, link.
Itong hyperlink. Alright? So, this is attribute used for locating an address. So, we'll also be using it to locate our CSS file. And then also, this is another HTML attribute that we are also going to learn in this class. And then naailain pagi, which is an internal styling. So it's similar to internal CSS, or not internal but inline. My apologies. It's called inline. Alright. So it's the same with the internal CSS, but this time you're going to write the CSS file directly on the HTML tag. So we will be using the style attribute. Alright. Now, don't you worry, we'll discuss it in a moment. So this is how an inline styling looks like. So we already know about color. Sorry. Hold on. Eraser. Alright. Inline styling is using the style attribute. So we know the P is an HTML element. So before we end our P, we added another attribute called style. And these are all CSS declarations or properties. So there are three ways. First is we're going to write all of our CSS files inside the head element. Diba? Right now, on your assignment, unsay nakasulod sa inyong head sa inyong website? Unsa na dito?
Title, sir.
Title pa lang, diba? Title pa lang. Now, this time, using an internal CSS, we can add more inside our head. Kung sa ito ibutang dito, we will add a style tag. And inside the style tag would be all the CSS declaration. That is an internal CSS. Now, an external CSS is the proper way. We're going to create a separate CSS file, and then we just have to connect our HTML and CSS. And then inline is directly adding the CSS properties inside the paragraph. The HTML element. Alright, so let's try this one. I'm going to open up the assignment. Let's see. Let me look for the assignment. Pagkita ko sa din ako kay muto pa na transfer. I think I have here. So we're going to design our we'll try to format our assignment. So for your assignment, for our next activity, you're going to enhance your kato assignment yung kato yung profile. Alright? It will be totally up to you unsaon ninyo, so long as I'll be able to introduce you how to do it using CSS. Let me look for the assignment real quick. Hold on. Dali lagay ha. Alright. So we will try to make the website look kind of like this. So for your assignment, diba? Atong assignment before is very basic. So you can make it look like this. Although this is not a really good design, really, obviously it doesn't look good. But at least you'll be able to control how the HTML elements are going to look like using CSS, just like this. So let me erase all of it for the meantime, so we can do it again. Hold on. Hello? Apa mo? So, alright. Sorry guys na-close mo din ako, sorry. Madungog lang ko guys.
Sir, yes, sir.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Yes, sir.
Feeling na ako, na-click na ako ang close. Sorry. Alright. Makita na balik ang screen?
Yes, sir.
Alright, let me restart the attendance real quick. Okay. Alright. Okay. Medyo swerte itong na-late kay we can start the attendance again. Hold on. Alright. Okay, it's starting now. Okay, sorry for that. Alright, hold on. I'm not sure nangawala manog ako ang mga ipang open. Napil din ako ka close ang Google Meet. Kadali lang. Okay, here's the code. Alright. Alright, so since we'll be dealing with codes now, make sure that I am currently on full screen. Make sure your phone is on full screen and then rotate your phone. If you're using smartphones, make sure you're on auto rotate and make sure naka full screen ang ako ang presentation para makita ninyo, okay? Because I cannot make it any bigger. Maybe I can do this. Alright, it's okay. I'm just going to make the codes look bigger na lang. Alright, so for the meantime, let's hold on. Let me just clear everything to make sure it's all kuan. Katong sa assignment kada lang. Alright, ba mo nito assignment? Pero nakatunga ni siya, but it's okay. Alright, so if this is our assignment, and this time around we're going to enhance it. Let's try to use CSS in designing our website. So hold on. So again, there are 3 ways on how we're going to use CSS, and let's discuss all of them one by one. So let's start from the first one. We have internal CSS. So for internal CSS, the CSS files or the CSS properties is enclosed inside the HTML element, HTML file, and it must be inside the head element. So that means all of our codes must be enclosed, must be written here inside the head. All right. Kung asa ganato ibutang sa head, and then unsa lang nga element itong gamiton for the CSS?
Style, sir.
Style. All right. Alright, so here we can add style that is still inside head, and we'll close it. And then all of the CSS files CSS files here, CSS properties. Alright, so inside the style, that is where we're going to add a CSS property. These are called internal CSS. Okay, and then another one is external. So in external CSS, we're going to create a separate CSS file, and then we have to link it. That will be the last thing that we're going to learn, because that's what we'll be doing. The next one is an internal styling. You say not internal, but inline styling. Let me change it real quick. Inline styling. This is useful for styling a single element only. So to do so, when internal styling kind of look like this. For example, if we're going to change the H1, we're going to add a style attribute, and then equals open and close quotation, and then we're going to write here our CSS properties. Alright, so that is an internal, this is an internal CSS. This is where we're going to add it, and then an inline styling, this is where we're going to add. So obviously, we will use the external, the proper way. So to do so, we're going to create a separate file. So here, let's open up our folder. Okay, let me erase this. Alright, so open up your folder or your website. So in my case, it's here. And then we're going to create a CSS file. Now, you can either just add directly here. Just right click new, and then text document, save it to style.css or whatever it is that you want to set as file name, but always make sure to save it .css. Alright, that's the file extension. So you can write it here, or you can create another folder. I guess the proper way is creating a folder. So let's erase this. We will add a folder because we want to make sure our website is as is as karaganing arrange siya ba? Naka-organize siya as much as possible. So we're going to create a folder. Let's call it CSS. And then inside our CSS folder, we're going to create a file, a text file. So just click write new and then text document. Let's set it to style.css. And then open it up. Again, the file extension is .css. Open it up. Okay, so I close ako ni. Or, if that would be a little hard for you, just click File New, and then Save As, and then look for the folder, and then save as style.css. Now, it would be totally up to you kung sa inyong file name so long as the file extension is .css. Okay? That's it. Now, this is an external CSS. So, first is, for us to test whether it's working, let's change the body to different color, background color. So, unsa ganito? Saan ganato siya pagsulat? How do we change the background color? So, first is we will add a selector, and then to add a selector, we'll just have to use, for the meantime, the element that we want to change. So since we want to change the background color of the entire body, so obviously we're going to call body. To do so, tangtangon na to ang iyahang brackets. We'll write body directly, and then we will write our declaration block. The declaration block is enclosed with open and close curly braces. Alright? So for background color, if you want to change the background color to to any color, any solid color, we will use background color property. Background dash color, and let's change it to for try lang. Let's save it to blue, and that's it. Save, and then let's save that. Now, how do we make sure that this particular CSS file will be connected here? Saan ganito? Who can recall?
Link, sir.
Okay, so we will use the link link tag. So to do so, we will add link, and then let's close it. And what will be the attribute that we'll be using? It's a nakatake of screenshot.
Rel, sir.
Rel. Okay, rel. And then, alright, let me just lang para madali ta. So how do we connect a CSS file to an HTML? So we will use link, and then rel. Inside rel, we'll write style sheet. Alright, that is like that is letting our web page know that we are about to import a style sheet or CSS file. So link rel style sheet, and then we'll add another attribute again, and this time the href. This will locate asa ron dapita nakasave ang atong HTML at our CSS. Now, since we're already familiar with locating links, what do you think would be the value of our href?
Style.css.
Style.css directa, ana? Sure? Is this correct?
Folder pa, sir.
Alright, we will include our folder. Remember, we created a folder. So if this is our index.html, alright, because everything starts with HTML man, diba? So if you are currently on HTML since we are inside index.html na file, so we'll start from index. Let's check the relationship between the two files. So from index.html, let's jump inside CSS, and inside the CSS folder, let's look for style.css. Okay, so we will write CSS folder and then style.css. So let's save this. And since we set in our CSS file, we set the entire body to background color is blue. Let's test if it's working. Let's save both of the files. Make sure to save both the files, and then reload. Hold on. Background color. Link rel style sheet href. Sakto ba itong ibuhat? Let's save this. Let's save this. Alright, sorry, gibutangan ako style. Tantangon na to ang style di ay. Alright, let's save that and let's open it up again. Here. Alright, so we're able to change the color. That means our CSS file is successfully connected to our HTML. So let's try again to see if it really is working. Let's try to change it to green. Alright, let's save it, change it to green, and then let's reload. Alright, we're able to change the background color as well. So therefore, it's true that our CSS file is already connected to our HTML file. Now we can start working on our assignment. So let's set it back to unsa may nindot ni color. Alright. So kana lang sa green lang sa, and then let's work our way from top to bottom. So unsa kay itsura sa atong website kung ganahan para natay reference. So this is what we want our website to look like. We'll try to make it we'll try to try natong zero ni if makaya ba nato. Alright, so first is we want to add a my profile, and the my profile na word is at the center. Nasa center siya, and then it is enclosed with a box, and inside the box na ay murag red line, and then we have our photo, the name, and then inside natay background image. Yes, natay background image, which is this. So we'll try to do that, and all of this, by the way, are using HTML and CSS. And then our objectives are on the left side, and on the right side is the personal information. Alright, it's blue and yellow, kind of like Ukraine. And at the bottom is our footer. Now, there are a few things that we are going to add inside our, para ma-achieve na ito nga look, there are a few things that we want to add in our HTML. So, since I've asked you to do an additional research, I'm hoping that everything that I'm going to add in our HTML now is going to be something that you're already familiar with. Alright? So again, for us to achieve this look, we are going to add a few HTML elements. Let's start with this. So kaning my profile, it's always better to make sure, since this is a header, we are going to enclose it with a header na element. Alright? So it's always better if na header ang inyong website, enclose it inside a header element. The header, I'm hoping that you already know about it because I asked you to do an advanced study. Header is an HTML element that enables the browser to understand that this part inside, whatever it is that is inside the header element, is going to be part of the header. Mura ba siya title or something like that? This header usually contains the links, the logo, something like that. So for the meantime, let's just add the my profile and header and heading inside the header. So that's number one. That's the first thing that we're going to add. Is we're going to add a section here that is called header. Okay. Next is the next thing that we're going to add is we're going to group each of these parts. Okay. We're going to group each of them individually. So we will use section and division elements. So first, for the banner, this one, ato na siyang i-group into a section. So we'll add a section na element, and everything that's starting from the image, katong profile picture, up to katong name, let's enclose it inside a section. All right. So far we've already added the header, and inside our header is the profile, my profile, nga kato kani, this one right here. And then we've also added our first section, and inside the first section is our katong profile picture or display picture and katong name, imong name. Okay? And then we're also going to group. Here we're only grouping, gigroup ra nato siya. Okay, but later on, for us to be able to transfer them individually, we're going to use another element, but that will be later on. And then next is we're going to group the kaning objective and personal information put. So that means we're going to add another section here, and let's enclose our personal information into one section. So that means Kani. Here, diri ko to. We'll add a section here. Ano? Isa. Alright, that's right. Section. And then, kadali lang. So we'll start the section here. Close na ito ang unang section. Information. Ano no? And we will end it here. So that means the personal information, professional skills, and then objective are enclosed inside a section. So atong gibulag ang atong header, which is this, atong banner, and this part right here as a one section. So let me just arrange the code real quick para nindutan awan itong label. And then section will be right here. All right. Okay. Do you follow? So there are two things that we've already added. We've added our header element, and inside our header is our katong my profile. And then on the next one, we've added a section. We've grouped our image and the H2 into one section. And then the personal information, professional skills, and objective are also included in one section. All right. This is just for us to be guided and for our para mas mabasa sa atong browser that these are being grouped together. But it's not necessarily when say the group na to using section, we can move it around together. Now, if we want to make sure that all of the files or all of the elements are grouped and pwede nimo siyang ma-move together, we'll have to group it using another element, and that's called division. So, for example, notice na kani ang atong picture ug ato ang kani ngalan is at the center compared ani. So therefore, we're going to move these two together. So for us to be able to move this together, we are going to group it. We know that we already grouped it into sections, but like I said, for us we cannot move it around because it only tells the browser that they are supposed to be grouped together. But we cannot move it around. Wala siya group lang, pero ma-move nato siya individually. But what if we want it to be grouped, like we can move it around together? That is where we're going to use another element called division. That is div, and I'm hoping you already saw it, you already knew about it when you did your advanced research. Alright, so using div, we'll be able to group it. This time around, we're able to group these two, ang atong picture, ang atong ngalan, tong H2, and then we can move it around. So I would suggest for the meantime, make sure those things that you wanted to be grouped together should be enclosed with sections and divisions. It will be totally up to you. But the difference between these two, the sections doesn't have any physical connection, relationship. It will not give any physical connection between different elements. Mura siya, gigroup pa nimo siya. Ano ba? Mura ba gitagaan nimo siya o gitagaan nimo idea ang browser na nakagroup sila, but the browser cannot do anything about it. But if you want to, let's say, move all, kato imong gigrupo niya, ganahan ka i-move sila together in one section, then we're going to use a division. So another, here, let's for example, personal information and professional skills, they are being grouped, but we are able to move it in the center, in the next column. So how did we do that? We use division. So that's div element for you. All right, do you follow?
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyway, you can just play this replay later on, so you can do it also on your website. All right. So we know that this must be grouped together. All right. And then obviously this must be grouped together as well. Alright, so that means personal information and professional skills must be grouped together. Therefore, we're going to add another division here. I-group na to ang professional skills o kana. Professional skills and no. Sayop. Dire dapat. We'll start here. That means we're going to group our personal information and then personal information and professional skills. That means if this is the start, this is where we are going to end. Alright, so that means this area right here are being grouped together just like what we did here. We group na to sila together. And so that we can move it around, we're going to enclose it with a division. Alright, and here, ato po na siyang i-group physically. Therefore, for objective, we're going to add another division. And then we're going to enclose our objective to one division. Alright, so we're able to group it all together now. So first is we let our browser know that this part right here must be grouped together using section, but that will only let the browser know. But if for us to be able to move it around, we're going to use div. Okay, just like this. So for us to be able to move this around together, we will use div. And for us to be able to group personal information and professional skills together, we use another div. Same thing with objective. So I'm hoping you still follow. Alright, the next, ito na button. Alright, papalitan naman sa discussion. So for the meantime, we'll stop here and let's continue with the discussion. And later on, we're going to work with our website. So let's save that for the meantime, and then let's proceed. Okay, so by the way, this is what the different ways to use CSS looks like. So internal CSS, like I said, the CSS files will be enclosed inside a style element, but that is inside our HTML file. External CSS is the one that we're going to use today. So we created another separated CSS file, and then we just have to connect it using this. Connect, and then inline CSS is this. So our CSS properties are written in line with the HTML element. So far, do you have any questions with how to use CSS? Nagets na the different ways? Okay, again, the proper way is using external. As much as possible, we should always use external. Alright, next is, let's talk about CSS selectors. Now, we've already prepared na nato ang HTML na to. But what if, for example, daghan na atong div, alright, di ba? Daghan na kaayo tang div nga gigamit. What if ang akong format lang is kanilang? By default, if I'm just going to call div directly, ma-apply siya tanan. Ma-apply siya diri nga division, and diri nga division. Same thing with the section. What if I'm just going to call here, let's say, section? That means all of the section will get affected. Nagets yung idea? Since there are multiple sections
Yes,
that
sir.
we've added inside our HTML, so if we're going to call the section here, all of the sections will be affected as well. The same thing if katong divisions, since we have different divisions now, we have 1, 2, and then 3. Now, since we have 3 divisions, every time that I'm going to add a CSS property for the div, kung buhaton ako tanan nga divisions maapektahan. Alright? Pero what if usa lang akong ganahan lang ko nga kanilang, and then the rest will be kept as is. So what should we do? Fundador says
Class, sir.
using class. Alright, that's right. using selectors. Not necessarily just class, but using selectors. CSS selectors are used to find, right? Find or select the HTML elements you want to style. The following are simple CSS selectors. So first, there are different type of selectors, by the way, and kato akong gihatag yung example ganina is called element selectors. It is the simplest way to target all elements of a given type. The element selector selects HTML elements based on the element name. For example, P, alright? Paragraph. If we want to format the paragraph, then we just have to write P, and all of the paragraph element inside the HTML tag will get affected, will get formatted. If this is what we're going to do, because tanan nga P man, for example, daghan nakay 5 ka P sa imong HTML file, then if you're going to select it using this way, using an element selector, then all of the paragraph element will get formatted. Here, all P elements on the page will be center aligned, and set with a red text color, font color. So again, if we're going to use it this way, all of the elements that you use, for example, in this case, P, will be formatted. Now, there are another way, if we want to be specific, na, for example, katong ganina, na atay 3 divisions, but what if usa lang akong iset? So, we will use a class. So, a class selector. Multiple elements can have the same class values. The class selector selects HTML elements with a specific class attribute. To select elements with a specific class, write a period character followed by the class name. So for example, this. So for us to be able to select a class, we're going to use dot before the class name. So first of all, asa na to makita ang class name? How do we set a class name? Alright, would you mind sharing us? Kinsa tong kabalo na? For example, there are 3 divisions here. How do we target this specific division only? Anyone? Okay.
Classic.
Yeah, through class. So how do we create classes? Madali ta. First is we're going to set a class name. So we're going to add a class attribute to our HTML element. So for this, for example, if we want to design only this particular division element, we're going to use a class. Alright? So a class is like a variable. It would be totally up to you. What do you want to use as your class name? For example, let's call it class first. Alright? Ano na lang. So therefore, this particular division is now unique. Unique na siya. Di na siya pareha sa uban because we already give it a unique class name. Now, for the class name, it would be totally up to you unsa inyohang ganahan nga ibutang, just like variables. So in this case, we use class name first. Now, how do we target this particular division in our CSS file? We can no longer use div because if we're going to use div, all of the division will get affected or will get formatted. But what if kanila? How do we target this? An idea?
That first, sir.
That first.
Okay, dot first inside our CSS. So dot first and then our CSS properties. So this is how we're going to target only for this division. So let's try. Let's set this koan. Let's give it sulay lang ta. Let's give it a width auto and then height. Let's give it about 100 px and let's give it a background color yellow. Okay, it will not look good, but just try. Matry lang nato. And let's discuss these later on. Let's try if it works. Oops, na-save ba? Wala. Taga na to ko 200 background color. First. Hold on, ano di mo gana na po.
Ang close siguro sa
Sige daw.
di ba ang div class then ay first then sa close niya sir is wala. So, okay ra na siya.
Wala lang. Sa start lang ka. Like, sa end, wala na. Let me see if na-ako sa'yo, ha? Na-ako sa'yo. I don't think I opened the right side. Dali. Okay, it definitely works because nigamay ang iyang size pero ang background color wala nakita. Hold on. Background color. Let's give it about, parakan ko na to, 800. It actually works because, as you can see, nisaka na iyang text. And let's give it a height of about 500 px. 500 px. Dara. Okay? So we just have to, so let's set it to 100% na lang. That means it will cover the entire width of the screen. Let's try. There. And then let's give it, cannot 500. Do you think it's about 500? Right, yeah, 500. Alright, so that's it. So we're only able to target this particular division only. Wala na na-appeal ng upan. Did you see that? So that is for us to be able to be specific. Because what will happen? Okay, what will happen if tangtangan na to ang class name, alright? And we will just use all the division. So that means instead of using class name, we will all use the div. So we can expect that all of this will be given the same format. So this first div, the second div, the third div. So let's try. Kana. Alright, so you can see all of the divisions are having the same properties. But if you want to be very specific on the particular element that you're going to target, then that's the time that we're going to use the class name. So therefore, we use the class name, just add dot, and then class name, which is first. So instead of all the divisions getting targeted at the same time, we're only targeting a specific division. Okay? Do you follow?
Yes, sir.
Yes sir.
Alright. Another way is called an ID selector. The ID selector uses the ID attribute on an HTML element to select a specific element. The ID of an element is unique within a page, so the ID selector is used to select one unique element. To select an element with a specific ID, write a hash, this one, character, followed by the ID of the element. We'll be using this and ID name. Right, so it's the same thing with class, but to be honest, up until now, I'm not really sure yet what's the difference between class and ID. But what I know is that most of the time, we will use class for CSS, and then ID is for using like JavaScript or something like that. But anyway, it will work just the same. For the meantime, I cannot tell you exactly the difference. Maybe we can do a research about it. But ID selector is just the same with class. But naadyo na siya difference, although I cannot tell you now, I'm not really sure. But na difference between the class and ID when it comes to how they use it. But the functions are still the same. So that means we can also use ID. So for us to use ID, we will write ID as our, okay, this is gonna be our attribute, and then we will use hash to target that ID. So that means, okay, let's have another example. So this is our first div. On our second div, let's give it a unique name ID. All right. So we will use ID attribute. Okay, and then let's give it second. Let's change it to banner to make sure. Banner. Let's change it to banner as well. For the second ID, let's call it personal. Okay, personal lang. All right. So we've given an ID for our second division, and then the ID name is personal. How do we target this particular ID only? And so, to siya pag-target on our CSS?
Hash personal, sir.
Hash. All right. So instead of katong ganina nga dot, we will use hash, and then personal. So that is using ID. So let's try. Let's give it, tanaw na itong itsura niya. Let's give it about, pila ni? 70% of the screen. Let's give it 70% of the screen and then height of, we'll discuss the properties later on, but for the meantime, we are currently discussing how to use CSS selectors. So let's give the width for about 70%. That means 70% of the entire screen will be used for so personal information section. Let's give it a height of about 600 px. And then background color is let's give it yellow man tong ganina. Let's give it red. Alright, try na dito. And let's take a look. Oops, wala lagi. Okay, I didn't save it. Tara. Alright, so we're able to group this and we're able to target this using ID. Kaya ang red sakit sa mata. Let's change that to something visible. Pink. Alright, that's better. Alright, so we're able to target the second division using ID. So that means we can use different selectors, either class or ID selectors. Or we can stick to the element selectors, but the disadvantage with the element selectors, it will target all of the elements and then apply those formats at the same time. Alright, so again, you can use either class if you want to be specific, class or ID. So far, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions with the selectors?
No, sir.
Alright.
None, sir.
Wala na po kayo makitang students. Again, guys, just keep your cameras turned on. Thank you. Alright, this time let's talk about the different CSS properties. Let's start with colors. Now, we've been doing colors already. We're just going to discuss it. CSS colors are commonly specified using color name, hexadecimal color value, or RGB color value. So what we've been doing is the color name. So we already know that for the color, the property is going to be color, right? If we want to change anything from background colors, font colors, for us to do it, we'll use color. So there are three ways on how do we set a value for our colors. First is color name. For example, maroon. Alright, so for example, maroon, that is a color name, diba? Or we can use hexadecimal color value. This is an example of hexadecimal color value using hash and then hex value of the color. And then we can also use RGB color value. So to write an RGB color value, this. We use RGB and then this one. Now, why do we need this? Unsa siguro yung nga namang usahay mo gamit ta ani? Unsay gamit siguro aning to? Why if naisa yung nga paagi, which is this, nga namang kinahanglan ta mo gamit ani usahay? What do you think would be the reason why we use this? If pwede man di ay nga na color name, nga pwede man gamit maandaan.
May color, sir, nga kuan, sir.
First,
Okay, let's kinsa to una sa kadasali. Go ahead, kadasali. Kadasali to una, di ba?
Na may color, sir, nga combination sa different line of color, sir.
Okay. So there are other colors that doesn't have any color name, di ba? What if you want a very specific color na wala siya nabilong sa katong color spectrum na naay mga name, yellow, green, inana. Because those are katong tertiary, primary, tertiary, secondary colors. What if there are specific color nga wala siya nabilong dito? That's the time that we're going to use either hexadecimal color value or the RGB color value. How do we find hexadecimal color value or RGB value? If you have Adobe Photoshop, okay, let's try out Adobe Photoshop na lang. Because if namoy Adobe Photoshop sa inyong computer, you can select the RGB and the hexadecimal color values by picking the color itself. Let's wait until it's open. Right now, nagbago na akong laptop. Let's try. Okay, for example, this one. Let's open up a new file. Okay, so using Photoshop, just select on the color palette here, and then pick the color you want. So, okay, para madali, let me open up a project na lang. Alright, it's okay. Just pick any color you want. For example, ganahan ko kani. Alright, kaning a specific color. Take a look at this. If you want the specific color, this is the hexadecimal. Kanina ay hash. Alright, this is the hexadecimal. And this is the RGB. Look for the one that says RGB. So this is the RGB. Alright, so for example, let's try to use this particular color. So first is we're going to copy this. This is the hex. Let's add it to our code. So let's change background color to that particular color. We just have to add hash. Alright. Let's reload. So instead of green, this. Kaning light, kaning mura o aqua blue. Alright. So the hash works, kani? Or we can also use the RGB. For the RGB, look for the one that says RGB. Can you see it on your screen? Makita lang ba? Gamay kayo yung screen makaga mobile phone, but
Yes.
if you see here in Adobe Photoshop on the first line na ay HSB, that's hue, saturation, and brightness, and then we have RGB, that is red, green, and blue. That's the primary colors, if you can remember. And then we have LAB, I'm not sure what that is, and then we have CMYK, that is for printing. Color quality. So we have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. But we want this RGB because this is digital. So we have RGB, so we have 30 for the R, and then 174 for the G, and then 179 for the B. That means we can use RGB value. So how do we write RGB value? This. We write color, and then RGB, and then parentheses. So the first number is for the R, the second number is for the G, and then the third number is for B. Alright? Ano siya? That is if you decide using RGB, because some designers use RGB man. So this is R, that's red, that is green, and that is blue. Alright, so let's try that. So instead of hash, let's try if it's working. We'll use RGB, and then parenthesis, and then the first number is gonna be for R. So here, let's test if makita ba dyan. I-close na ako ang Photoshop dara. So unsay value sa R dire? Let's see if makita ba dyan ninyo.
30, sir.
30, sir.
Makita ba dyan? Alright, so that's 30, then 174 and 179 for the blue. Okay, so that's 30, that's 179 and
174.
174. Ako ba? Yeah, 174,
Bali, sir.
179. Balik. 174 and 179. Alright, so this is the red, this is the green value, and then this is the blue value. Let's try, let's see if it's working. Let's test if same yung color, that means it's working. Yeah, it worked. Para makita ito, let's try to change with something else rather than that particular color. What if I want, let's say, this, kaning mura og amber na color. So we'll copy, the R is 200, 141, and 27. So 200, 141, nalimot tayo sir, 27. 27 for the blue. Let's save that. Let's reload. Amber. Okay, that's it. Alright, so you can select, you can use Adobe Photoshop for you to be guided with the different color values. So let me just close it. Or, good thing about those who doesn't have any Adobe Photoshop, just go to W3 Schools, and then, or pwede rin mo Google, but for W3 Schools, naamoy pareha ato. Just go at the bottom, this one, color picker. click on the color picker and select the color you want. For example, this one right here, and just select the shade that you want. So for example, ganahan ko ari na punta sa kaning part, kani, and I want this particular color. So just have to click that and notice nga nay nakabutang dire ang iyahang hexadecimal, the RGB value, and na po HSL. But this is a little bit complicated. But this is the same thing, but you can also use HSL if you really like to. But I would only suggest the hex value and the RGB value. So this is the RGB, so let's copy that. And let's save. Alright. So do you have any questions so far with the colors? So you can use Adobe Photoshop, or you can go to w3schools.com to get the color value for hexadecimal and RGB. Or if you have Adobe Photoshop, you can use Adobe Photoshop. So all of the example above will set the color with element ID color to maroon. So here are some basic colors. Obviously these are not all the colors, but for the basic ones that has name on it, let's say maroon, red, orange, yellow, these are the equivalent hex code and decimal code. For hex code, always add hash at the beginning. Alright, and then you can go to w3schools.com/colors to get this. Next is background. The next properties we'll talk about are background. You can fill HTML elements backgrounds with color or image, clip and or resized, and otherwise be modified. So there are different CSS background properties. We have background color, background image, background repeat, background position, background attachment. So far, we've been using background color, this. But you can also change your background with, let's say, image. Or you can also, since it is image, pwede mo i-repeat ang image, thus allowing you to create a pattern. And then we can also set the position, ug asa nimo ibutang, asa mag-start ang background, and background attachment. The background attachment is the background's behavior on how it's gonna behave the moment that you're going to scroll. So let's try to let's try this one by one. Let's start with the image. So right now we set our background to a color, right? Since we use background color. Claro ba? Background color ba itong giset? So obviously, since we use background color, we're gonna skip that. Let's proceed to image. That means we can use image as our background. So for the meantime, let me look for a picture that I want to use as the background. I have here a lot of wallpapers. So what's my need that nga wallpaper, ano ba? Sige na lang, kanina lang. I want this to be my wallpaper. So I'm gonna copy this. Let me paste it on my website. So again, if you want to add web pictures or want to import multimedia on your website, make sure to include it on a folder. So I have here created a folder called image. That is where I'm going to put it. Oh, nanamday ko banner di ay. Kanina lang. Kanina lang akong gamiton, kanina banner.jpg. Alright, so I already have a background picture, which is this banner.jpg. That's the file name. This one right here. So therefore, I just have to use, instead of background color, let me erase this. Let me change that to background image. Now, how do you think is the proper way of adding a background image on our URL? On our CSS. How do we locate it? What do you think should we do? Alright, we're going to use this background image, and then for us to locate the picture that we're going to set as our image, type in URL. So instead of href for HTML, we're going to use URL, and then open and close parenthesis, and then filename.jpg or location filename.jpg. Alright, so for example, my file name is banner and it is saved on img folder or image folder. So what do you think should I write here for the background image location? So URL and then nasa siguro yung location.
IMG.
Okay,
Banner
img then slash and then banner.jpg. Alright. So again, make sure if you wanted to use image as your background, you're going to type in URL and then open and close parentheses and then the address. But for the address, it must be closed with quotation, double quotations. So let's save that. Let's see if it's working. Body. Oh, it's not in the body. Hold on. Delete ko ganahan sa body mo butang. Instead, add ko sa banner. Let me change it back. Hold on. Dire, instead nga yellow, dire na ko butang ang background image. So again, background. Instead of image, a background color, we will use this background image. Colon and then URL parenthesis double quotation and then img slash. Okay, this is really interesting because you'll notice that this will not work. That's right. This is really interesting, like I said, because this is another thing that you have to think about. This. So we know na natay img. We need to enter img first before going into the banner. Is that right? Sakto ba ni? Diba? Ganina, if we're going to apply
Yes, sir.
atong nabalaan dire, this is how we're going to locate. But this time, img slash banner, that should work, right? But let's see if it works. It really will work. Let's try. Wala siya ni work. What do you think happened? Ano siguro wala?
Wala siya mabutang sa concept at sa HTML.
Gibutan mo na to, gi-connect naman nato, di ba? Actually, this is right. However, dili niya malocate ang atong banner.jpg. Why do you think that is? Ano siguro? Alright, let's look at the layout of our website again. Remember, nga ganina, since here, in this case, since we are working on index.html, dili nga side, since this is index.html, all we need to do is, since if we're going to look at our layout, all we need to do is, since index.html is outside the folder, we just have to go directly to CSS, right? And then look for stuff.css, correct? However, this time, we are currently inside, we are working on style.css. Nya, asa nakasave atong style.css? Asa siya nakabutang? Nakasulod siya folder. Diba? So, if we're kanina, mo niya itong style.css, dili ta pwede nga budrekta diretso sa image because right now, we cannot find image folder here. Do you understand? So, unsa itong button? Maggawas usa ta sa CSS nga folder so that we can go to image nga folder. Do you understand? Okay, again, right now, our CSS file, okay, since currently we are working on CSS file kani, and we know that our CSS file is inside a folder called CSS. Diba? So for us to go to this picture, for us to use this picture right here, of gagikan ta sa CSS nga file, we have to jump outside the CSS folder first, gawasa ta, before going into the image folder. Do you understand? Alright, wala ni react. So, let's do it again. Alright, so we know that we're working on this one right here, style.css. Let's
mag-add na po kag laing folder sa imong code.
Yes, that's it. But before that, ato sa sabton nga nung kinahanglan gawas. So we know that the style.css is inside a folder called CSS. Is that true? Do you agree? Ang
Yes,
atong
sir.
CSS nga file
Yes,
gisulod
sir.
nato og CSS nga folder, as you can see here. Alright.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, for us to go, since ang atong picture is nakasulod kag separate nga folder, therefore, for us to get into this banner.jpg, we have to first jump outside from CSS folder. Okay, since this is the style.css, we'll have to jump outside CSS folder, and once it's outside, let's jump in to the img folder so we can look for banner.jpg. Nagets? Nagets na. Therefore, here's what
Yes,
we're
sir.
going to do. We're going to command on the URL address, we're going to command that, huy, gawa sa CSS folder, go to the image folder. To do so, we'll write dot dot slash, okay? Dot dot slash meaning it will jump outside its current location, one folder, and then jump in to image, and then banner.jpg. Alright, so let's save that, and then let's reload. It should work just like that. Okay, alright, so we're able to jump outside and then jump in using this. So this one right here is equivalent of one folder jump. What if, okay, what if ang CSS folder, okay, we're going to create another folder here, CSS2, and then what if ang style.css nakasulod siya sa CSS2? What if kaninga file nakasulod siya dire? What will happen? We're also going to add another dot dot slash. So each dot dot and then slash is equivalent to one folder jump. Alright? But for the meantime, we're not going to do that because we'll have to start over again. So let me just erase this and let's keep it as it is. Kana, dali na nato hapit naman mo man ang klase ay. Alright, so dot dot slash will allow us to jump from the current folder and then transfer to another folder. Next, so what if you notice on the picture? Dako na kayong picture, right? Naka-zoom in siya maayo. I'm not sure if you noticed, but this is the original one. Dapat daghang details makita, but the only thing that we are seeing is this part. This part right here is the only thing that we are seeing currently. So how do we make sure that we can see the entire picture? So here, we will use another property as another one. Wala na ako nabutang, but we have background size. Background size ba to? Let's try. Wala na ako nabutang dire, but background size. Let me check if it's the right one. If we want to see everything, then we'll add another background property. Let's say size. Size ba to? Let me check. And then let's set it to cover. I don't think that is. I think, hold on. Background size 100% ko na. Alright, for us to be able to see the entire thing, we'll use background size. That's it. Alright, so we'll use background size and then let's set it to 100% for us to be able to see the entire thing. Okay, so that's the next property, and then next is background repeat. So background repeat is necessary if you want to, if you kanang gama kag pattern. Alright, gama kag pattern, and obviously you want the pictures to repeat by itself. So let's set the background size to, let's say 10% lang para magamay siya. Therefore gamay kayong pictures ron. Kana. So by default it will repeat. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but right now it's creating a pattern because we set the, makita ba? Maklaro ba ninyo nga gama siya pattern?
Yes, sir.
Pictures
Yes, sir.
Yes,
By
sir.
default, mag-repeat ang picture. If gamay nga picture imong ibutang, magbalik-balik ang picture. However, you can control on how many times it's going to repeat by itself. Pwede ra bang horizontal or vertical. Tara. So, background image repeat. Again, by default, CSS automatically sets the background image horizontally and vertically. You can control the repeat by just horizontally, that is using repeat X value, or vertically repeat Y only, or no repeat at all. So this is how it's going to look like if it's using repeat X, meaning repeat horizontally, and repeat Y, repeat horizontally, vertically, and then no repeat, meaning it will not repeat at all. So let's try. So let's set the background repeat to Namoy classic 11? Wala.
Wala, sir.
Wala. Okay, that's good. So this is repeat Y. They repeat vertically. Yeah, repeat Y is vertically, meaning it will only repeat vertically from top to bottom lang. Can you see it? Makita ba? Ni-repeat siya pero vertical lang. Now,
Yes, sir.
repeat X is horizontally. That means it will repeat paana. Alright? Okay, by default, it will repeat both horizontally and vertically man. But you can control on kung asa ra siya repeat. But what if ganahan kang digit siya repeat at all, then just add no repeats. Save that. Let's reload. Okay, dili siya makita, natabanan siya sa akong picture, but the image is right about here. Let's increase the size then. Let's give it about 50px, 50%. Kana. Alright, so it didn't repeat at all. So we don't want that, we want it to be 100% so that it will be visible. Okay, that's it. Next. Position. Alright, so we can set the initial position of a background image using background position property. By default, background position as we have top, left, right, center, bottom, left. Basta mo ni value sa atong background position. Let's decrease the size again. Let's give it about 20%. And by default, the position is the top left. That's the default value. We can move this picture around if you want to using background position. So let's try. Okay, background. Okay lang mo extend tagamay para mahuman din natong klase sa mga 10 minutes lang.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hang pagod akong computer. Dali lang nga ni hang ang computer naman. There's one down. Okay, let me open it up again. Notepad plus. Paano to na save that? Dali lang. Alright. So again, let's set the background size to 20%. And then we'll set the background repeats. Background position rather. Position. By default, the background position is top left corner. This one right here. Top left top. What if we want it to be centered? So we'll just use the centering value. So let's set it to center. Let's see. Okay, na-center na siya. And then we can also use other values like we can combine all of these values. Let's say center top. Alright, let's try center top. Let's save that and let's reload. Alright, so basically we can move the background picture around using these values. Okay, so I will not go through all of them because it will take a lot of time. You can just try it yourself. Ariel, go ahead.
Sir, katong sa my profile, sir, pwede po niya siya gamiton sa my profile para ma-move to siya.
Katong asa man ani?
Katong your picture, sir, kanang picture name.
Alright, yeah. Later on, we'll proceed here. We'll although it's the same, it's another way, but yes, we can also move this to the center. We can move this around, but that'll be later on, okay? For the meantime, we're just doing the background. It's going to be similar pero lahi na syntax. Later on, we'll get to this. All right. That's a good question. That's a good question. Thank you. But right now, this is only applicable for background images. Right. So sunod. And then attachment. Right. This is really good. Background attachment property sets whether a background image position is fixed within a viewport or scrolls with its containing block. So maybe some of you notice nga, maybe some of you have visited a website nga ang background picture dili mo move kung mag-scroll down ka. So we can also do that. Using background attachment. So there are 3 values. We have scroll. The background image will scroll with the page. This is the default. Fixed, the background image will not scroll with the page. And then local, background image will scroll with the element's contents. So basically scroll and local are almost the same, but fixed, if we don't want our background to move, if we're going to scroll down, we're going to use the value fixed. Let's try that. So that is background attachment. Let's set it to fixed. And our web page is not, or the background image is not going to work. Let's change it to 100 again. It's not going to scroll, rather. Alright, so right now, we know that the background image is moving, diba? Kung we scroll down nato, mo scroll po ang image. You see it? Let's save that. Let's save both of them. But if we're going to set the background attachment to fixed, let's check. Alright, here. Please take note, if I'm going to scroll down, the picture will stay on its place. Have you seen it? Claro? Alright, so the background image will stay on its place if we're going to set the background image, background position to fixed, or background attachment to fixed. So this is really cool, especially if we're working on multiple. Tandag ko na ng mga website. This is really cool actually. Alright? Next, borders. Alright, border properties allow you to specify the style, width, and color of an element border. So there are different border properties. We have border width, border style, border color. Okay, border width specifies the width of the border. Default value is medium. Border style specifies the style of the border. Default value is none. Border color specifies the color of the border. Default value is color of the text. Alright, so border, from the term suggest, mura tag mag-add ra og linya palibot sa imong element. So for example, sa may butangan nato border dere. Okay, just as an example, pero ato ra pong i-change. For example, kaning name nako, Juleus or Publico, since it's not really clear, let's try to change the font color to something else, and then we'll add a border around it. So let's do that. Sa itong Juleus Publico, H2. Alright, so that means we will call H2. And then let's just change the color to white. Let's check. Okay, change na, color white na siya para makita. And then we will add a border. So unsay mga values of the border, we have width, style, and color. So for the border style, here are the different border styles. I dotted, dashed, solid, double, so on and so forth. So we'll try the dotted. So for us to get dotted, we'll just use border style and then dotted, and then if we can totally update to try the rest of the borders. So try lang ta, border style, and then let's say dotted. Let's reload. Here, okay. Have you seen it? Anti-border na to ang ngalan. So you can control how this border is going to look like using border style, border color, border width. So I'm not going to go through all of them because I don't really use border that much. But here. Next is margin. CSS margin properties, or by the way, we'll add border ay para kaning sa atong my profile. Alright, so since we want our website to look like this, and our kaning my profile na siya inato, so let's do just that. So, sa banner, header. So we'll add header, and then let's set the background color with blue na lang. Alright, and then let's set the width to 100%, and then height, let's give it about 50 px. Alright, kana. Alright, it's almost the same na. Dungagan na to gamay. Let's give it about 100. And instead of blue, let's look for other color para nandito gamay. Do you still follow, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll use, that's good. We'll use this color. Okay? So we'll copy this. Please let me know if na maglibog, okay? Alright, kana. Alright, that's better. And we want the profile to be color white as well. So let's set the color to white. Alright, and what else? We want to change the font, right? I think not na a part na discussion ang font. Or wala na ako nabutang ang font. So we'll discuss one thing about fonts. So if we want to change the font size, font weight, font face, wala na akong nabutang di ay sa discussion. Let's go to CSS and then let's look for fonts. Look for fonts here. Okay, so we have here font styles. Properties. Dara. We have font family. We have font style, font size, so on. So for us to change the font face, we will use font family. So how to write font family? Let me zoom it in. Font family property should hold several font name as fallback system. So for example, ang font na imong ibutang is wala, di siya available sa computer. You can add an additional backup, then you can add more than one font family. So let's try. For the meantime, let's change the font family to. This is how you're going to change the font face, okay? So we use family. That means di lang usa pwede na ito ibutang because na yung mga computers na really available nila ang font. So for example, we want Arial. So that's our kanang primary option. Kumbaga siya may ato ang priority na font. What if ang computer wala Arial? We'll add another fallback na font. Let's say times Century Gothic. Alright, but notice that Century Gothic is 2 words. So if di nato siya ang mahitabuan ni kay ang basahon ra ni isang century lang, not the entire Century Gothic. So for us to make sure that the computer will read it as Century Gothic, if ang font na siya multiple words, we're going to enclose with double quotation. Alright? Now, if wala Century Gothic, then you can list multiple fonts, but if wala jud tanan nga fonts imong gibutang, let's add the default. Let's add a default one, which is the type of font that you're going to use. So these are the generic font family. We have serif, sans serif, monospace, cursive, fantasy. I know you guys already know about this because we discussed it in our graphics and visual computing lesson. So when you say serif, mo ni siya katong mga text na ay mga naipakapin ba. For example, serif are fonts that kind of look like this. For example, J. This is what serif means. Kani. Sans serif is katong letter na walay mga inani. Do you get it? So since Arial, because since this is what the type of font that we want, so we will add sans serif at the end. So that means if wala jud tanang fonts imong ibutang, then just add sans serif because it will just select any sans serif font on your computer. So let's try that. Let's save. Asa na ron? Alright, since Arial is available in my computer, that's why it says that my profile is changed to Arial. And then let's add a border at the bottom. As you can see, na siya line, so we will add a border here. So to do so, still under header, we'll add a border, and this is a little tricky. We can either just add, let's say, 20px, and then let's set it color red. That means it will give the entire bold in the entire katong box with a border 20px color red. Alright, it is on display. Border. Ano delete? Border style. Alright, okay. Well, we'll skip this for the meantime para madali na. I'll get back to you on this later on. Let's proceed to the next. We have margins. Alright, this is for the questions a while ago. If saan nato pang mapatunga nato, mabalhin nato ang mga katong header nato kanina, ang image ug ang word. Then this is what we're going to use for us to be able to move this around. It's a Tony question kanina about this. So for us to be able,
sir.
Okay, this is how we're going to move it around kanina to pictures using margin. For the meantime, let me remove this border because it doesn't look good. Border. Okay, let's move this one. Okay. Alright. CSS margins properties are used to create space around elements outside of any defined borders. With CSS, you have a full control over the margins. There are properties for setting up the margin for each side of the element. We have top, right, bottom, and left. CSS has properties for specifying the margin for each side of an element. So the margin will allow us to create a space between the sides of the element. So we can either do it individually, margin top, right, bottom, and left, or we can do it together. Alright, so this will allow us to move our pictures around. If we're going to add space, so unsa na to mapatungan ni picture, we just have to add a space on the left side. So we'll be able to move this around by creating a space or by adding a margin. So let's start with margin top. So this is the property. We have length, auto. The actual length will give us a specific margin in either pixels, point, centimeters, or etc. Auto means we will just allow the browser to select the auto, calculate the margin automatically, and then we have percent, and then inherit. All right. So for the meantime, let's try length lang sa. Let's see how that works. So for example, this picture, we will try to move this around and this. So how do we do that? First is if you can remember, we did group it into a banner, diba? Okay, so this time, hold on. Let's group this together na lang po. Let's try to group this together para we'll be able to move it around. Let's give it another division and let's call it, let's use a class and DP, display picture. We'll add another division. Again, division is really important if you want to make sure that our website is as dali siya ma-arrange ba as much as possible. So we will add another class called DP, that stands for display picture, and then alright, and then let's move it around. We'll call it right here. So since it's class, unsa na to sa pag-target, since it is a class, dot DP, and then let's add margin. Let's say margin top. Let's start with the top. Let's give it like 20px just to see how it looks like. So we'll add margin top and save both of it. Alright, it allows us to create a space. So let's move it to the right foot. So let's give a margin to the left, let's say give it 100 px. That's it. Alright? Notice that it allows us to start moving it around. Kabante mo? Nagkinahina na siya move around. So by just increasing the margin or something like that, we'll be able to move it around. So let's increase it furthermore. Let's give it about 300 px. That's it. Alright, therefore, at some point, we'll be able to move it to the center. But that is really not that, dili kaya siya nindotan if we're going to make it look this way. So therefore, hold on. Alright, the best way siguro for us to be able to move this around is this. At the center, let's combine na lang. Now, we can also set all four margins for any elements using one property only. This is still the use of the margin property. The property can have 1 or 2, 3 values. So if we're going to set one margin for one value lang, so instead nga magbutang ta og top, bottom, right, left, we'll just add margin, and depending on the number of values that we're going to add, we'll specify the size. So if we're going to add 1, that means it will give 20 px for all the sides. For all the sides rather. So we can just move, instead of adding margin top, margin left, we can just add margin, and depending on the number of values that we're going to add, will determine its the size for each side. So if we're going to add 1, that means, let's say if we give it 100, that means it will give 100 px for all the sides rather, just like this. So naa siya 100 px at the top, 100 px at the bottom, and right now it's not visible, but it has 100 px at the bottom and then right. We can increase it further. For example, let's give it 100, and it will also give us 200 for all sides. And now, what if we're going to add 2 values? Alright, if 2 values are specified, the first value applies to the top and bottom. The second one is going to be left and right. So for example, in this case, since there are 2 values, the first one is parang sa ganing first value. This will apply for
The
Top
top
and bottom.
Top and bottom, sir.
and the 20 would be
Left and right.
left and right. Alright, so
Left
let's
and
try
right.
just that. Okay, mag-send sa taga mayroon guys, aron din ta magbalik sa klase the entire week. If wala may klase.
Wala, sir.
Alright, so this, for example, we'll give the top and bottom 100, and then the left and right is 200 px. Alright, let's save that. Let's reload. And that. So 900 sa top and bottom, and then 200 sa left and right. What is 3? Okay, wala na akong nabutang. So what if 3? Kung 3 ang ito ibutang, top, bottom ang first, and then the left and right would be the second and third. And then in 4, that's top left, bottom right. Alright, so again, let's move it to the center for us to be able to para mamanta. Let's move it to the center. And how do we do that? Let's try. There are different ways to do it using margin. Let's try this. Let's set it to top and bottom. So let's set the first one to auto. That's top and bottom, and then 0. Let's try this. 0 and then auto. Let's try if this works. No, auto 0 down. Auto 0. Alright, hold on. Okay, let me try lang. Gana ba ni? For the banner, let's set the banner to text align. Let's give it center. Let's see if this will fix para sa yun na. Okay, na siya sa tunga. Alright, so another way po to make sure that everything must always be centered is using text align. So we all know that this area right here is the banner. So we can just set everything that is inside the banner is centered, and here we can use this. All right. Next, hold on. Boringan na sa. Ako po boringan sa sir. Tiwasan rin natin eh. Next is paddings. CSS paddings create space between or within an element. It clears an area around the inside of an element. Similar to margins, you have full control over the padding. So let's just say, okay, for this to be understood, what is the difference between padding and margin? Let's take a look at this picture. So if this is the element, the padding is, okay, these are two elements, by the way. This box right here is an element. So if this is the banner, going back, this is the banner, this is one element. Itong division na to ba? And if this is element, okay, so the padding is padding is ganing ang space inside. So if this is the element, the padding is gani. Okay, the space between the first element and the second element. However, inside, the margin is outside. So, munang if, for example, this, how do we make this particular picture move to the center? We can use margin, right? We can use margin. However, here's what's gonna happen. So for the margin, let's give it margin top. Let's give it 100 px. We can move it to the bottom. However, money mahitabo niya. Money, we'll create siya space at the top. So how do we fix it? So let's remove this, but instead of using margin, we'll erase this. We're going to use padding. So same thing, if we're going to add one value, that's going to be for all sides. If two values, it's going to be top, bottom, left, and right. Same thing sa margin. So let's give it about, so we have padding top, padding right, padding bottom, padding left. We can also use length or percentage. And we can also sort for paddings of elements. So just like margins, yapon. So how do we, okay, let's try. So if we're going to add a padding at the top, so let's say padding top, let's give it, let's say 220 px. Let's see how it looks like here. So notice that we'll be able to move our pictures to the bottom using padding. Let's increase it, let's say 50 px. All right. So the moment that we're going to increase the padding for the top, the space between our banner and the picture itself also gets increased. That's why we'll be able to move this around. So let's say 100. Okay, that's it. So all right, so that pretty much centered it out. Center na ba siya? Or we can use 50% to make sure it's centered. Let's use 50%. Let's see before. 50% of the entire screen pwede makita. So, kana na lang. Let's just use 100. But this is not the proper way. Anyway, we'll discuss how do we make sure that our web page is going to adapt to different screen sizes automatically in our next meeting. That's going to be in our responsive website discussion. Alright, so it's centered out, right? Centered na ba siya? Pwede na ba ni?
Yes, sir.
Alright, and
Pwede na, sir.
pwede na. Okay, and then since circle money, how do we make it circle? Let's just use this. Iwasan lang nato atong website before we end, so you can do it on your website as well. So here, so right now this is square, and let me give you one tip to make it circle. Banner image kani. So we will call the kani nga image, and to make sure nga kani nga image atong i-select, how do we do that? Asa na bilang ang image?
sir. Ayan.
Yeah, pero wala man tayo kuan. Nakagama na ta og division class, diba? We can either just add another class here to make sure, but here's another trick. So we will just target the image inside the banner. Diba? Wala na may lain nga image inside the banner. Kana ramang usa. So how do we target that? We'll use this. So first is we will call the banner. So that's banner. And then img. Alright? So it will call the image inside the banner class rather. So we know that img is generic. Pwede tanan niya image yang tawgon. But in this case, we are specifically calling for the image inside banner. Nagets ra?
Yes, sir.
Alright, because
Yes.
if
Yes,
kanilang,
Yes.
naon lang nato, tanan nga image maapektuhan. But if you want this image na specific ra inside the banner, then we will use banner and then img, meaning kanila nga image inside the banner. If na kay multiple image, then that's the time that you're going to add a class name. Okay? Then we'll use border radius. Border radius is kanang iyahang curvature sa iyang edge pa. So let's give it about 10px, 10%. 10px lang. Let's see how that looks like. Okay, it's not so visible, so let's increase it a little more, 50px. Okay, notice the edge, naghinahinay siya ka-curve. Kabante mo? That's border.
Yes, sir.
That's border radius. Now, we can, since this is a perfect square, so we'll know that if we're going to set it to 50%, that means that's already half. So that means we'll be able to create a perfect circle. If only if it's square. Alright, so make sure ang inyong DP nga inyong gamiton is square. You have to wrap it into perfect square so you can create a perfect circle na border radius. Alright, okay, so we'll just finish it up. So same thing, kani, let's set it to center. So let's go back. So how do we center it out? So it's in header, so therefore, let's set the header na text align to center. Let's check. Alright, center na siya. And then for the padding, let's give it about, that's 100px, so let's give it about 50px down. Let's see how it looks. Okay. Alright, I guess that's okay. Let's give it about 30px. Alright, let's just keep it as it is. And then this time ang objective ato siyang ibutang dire. So since we set this to pila ni ka percent kani atong personal information, ang width niya, unsa atong giset? 70. Right, 70. Asa ron? Dara. Since we set the personal to 70, pila ang picas para mahimo siyang 100%? 30.
30.
Alright. Therefore, the objective, we're going to set it with a background, the width to 30. So, kung sa itong gigama sa itong back objective, wala pa. So, let's add a class. Let's say, class name is objective. And then, let's call it here. So, since it's a class, so dot objective. And let's set the width to 30px. And then, the height is the same thing. Height. Okay, 600px. And then background color. So, unsa man to? Yellow na lang. But obviously, this is not a very good design. Okay, you can once you'll be doing your yung website, you'll have to make sure it looks good. Back width and then 30%, not px. Okay, so we have 30 at the top and then 70 at the top and then 30 at the bottom. Pero naubos siya. Alright, there's one way to fix that. Para masaka siya, that's using the float property. Hold on. Okay, so what do we want to do is ganatang ipasaka ni, and this particular right here will be at the right side. So we're going to set float property. We're going to use float property on personal. Let's try float and then right. Check sa kung sakto ba ha? Here. Alright. So for us to be able to move, ipaspasan na dyan maayo. Alright, let's remove this first. Now, ang personal nga, okay, para mag-gets. Alright. So what happened right now is, save. Let's set it back to the previous one. Okay. Ganina, right now, ang objective is nasa abos, and then the personal information is the top. Now, kung saan natin mabahig siya, we want the personal information to move to the right side para kaning objective musaka. Okay? Nagets ang idea? We want to move this personal information nga division to the right side because na may enough na space. We'll move it to the right side so that the objective can insert to the top. Alright? And to do so, we will use a float property. Kung sa ato i-float, ang personal will move it to the right. Now, please research about float later soon para din ako ma-discuss ni tanan, so please do an advanced research about this. So if we're going to use float property, we'll be able to move the personal information to the right side so that the objective can maka-add to siya sa top. Alright? And then, obviously right now it doesn't have any space. How do we add space in between? Kani? Nakatapot kayo siya sa edge. How do we add the space?
Padding.
Borders.
Padding. Right? Okay, last na ni guys. So in the personal, we'll add a padding. So by adding one value, it will give the entire value to the entire side. So let's give it about 20px. And then same thing with the objective. Let's add the padding. Let's give it about 20px. Alright. Okay. So we can make it look like this good, but it will take a lot of time. So please finish it up for the footer. Just finish it up and try to make your website look something like this. Alright? Katong website niyo yung gigama. Right? Do you think you'll be able to do it yourself?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright.
Yes, sir.
Kalabar ako.
Yes.
Alright, okay, please make sure to watch the replay of this class later on. I'm going to upload it, so you'll be guided as well. Para magamat mo yung assignment, na-upload si Sir Magyaw-yaw sa background. Alright, so do you have any questions before we end?
Naram ni Google Classroom ng imo ang answer sa
Ang assignment na
video.
ara. Kani po, i-send ko na ako ning i-save ra jud tong link na yung gihatag niyo because ina-upload na ako tanang mga presentation files dito para ma-download niyo yung mga presentation files. Okay? Right, yeah, napilang question? Okay. Apa?
Sir.
Okay, thank you so much guys for the patience of staying in the class. So we're already done 2 hours and 30 minutes. Okay. Okay, para katong mga ni stay, this is an equivalent of 2 meetings. Alright, 2 meetings na siya nga attendance for those who stayed. Para to give extra credit those who stayed from up until the end. So later on, naman ni pila ka percent. So those who get 65% and above attendance today will be given 2 days worth of attendance. Okay? Kindly turn on your cameras one last time so we can take our photo shoot yan. And then stand by for the assignment and assessment to be posted later on as well as the replay as well. Alright. If makita ninyo ito na classmate, please take a screenshot. Right. Okay, I'm seeing it now. So ready. 3, 2, 1, smile. Alright. Okay, thank you so much guys, and I hope you learned something from today. And really hope that you can build your website or you can design your website for our next topic, okay? Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys.
Sir,
Thank you.
thank you.